Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited for you to be part of the first of 3 webinar series called Tackling Plastic Pollution. My name is Brooke Harrison, and I am the project coordinator for Divert and Capture, the fight to keep microplastics out of our water. I just want to start with a few housekeeping rules. We do have a chat and a question box. We will be monitoring both throughout. If you do have any questions, we'll be having a 15-minute question period at the end. So please put any questions or comments you have in the question box. And then there is also the chat box, which you're welcome to use as well. This webinar will be recorded, so you will be able to view it after. At the end of the webinar, you'll receive an email with a survey in it. I encourage you to fill out the survey. This helps us think of different ideas and know what you guys would like to see in the future. So if you are able to fill out that survey, that would be greatly appreciated. The Tackling Plastic Pollution webinar series is a collection of webinars aimed at raising awareness about the abundance of plastic litter in our local and global waterways. We hope from this webinar that you'll learn some practical tips that you can take home and change in your everyday lives. And we'll also share some different and exciting projects that Georgian Bay Forever is currently working on. So let's begin. Just to quickly start, Georgian Bay Forever, we are a charity dedicated to scientific research and public education on Georgian Bay's aquatic ecosystem. Our mission is to protect, enhance, and restore the aquatic ecosystem of Georgian Bay by funding accredited research on water levels, water quality, and ecosystems. I'm very excited to announce our 4 wonderful speakers today, GBF's 4 plastic pollution staff. They are based out of Collingwood, but kind of surrounding the Georgian Bay area. They've been hosting shoreline cleanups, installing microfiber filters, working with deep dives on different trash trapping devices that Georgian Bay Forever has been installing, and working on this webinar series, as well as so much more that we will learn about today. They all come with a great wealth of knowledge. Bronwyn Kirby is an environmental sustainability and environmental technology student with a specialization in ecosystem management at Lakehead University. Carrie Lynch is a 3rd-year biology student at Queen's University, focusing on animal and ecological systems. Sophie is a 2nd-year biology student at the University of Victoria, and Emma is a 3rd-year Dalhousie student studying environmental sustainability and international development with a minor in geography. So on that note, thank you again so much for participating in this webinar, The Effects of Wearing Plastic. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Bronwyn. So thank you so much again for signing up to be a part of our Tackling Plastic Pollution webinar series. Our first one today is on the textile industry and fibers and fabrics. And so we're going to look at the impacts on the environment and on human health and what you can do to lower your impact as a consumer. Our second webinar is plastic recycling working? It's on July 29th at the same time, 12 p.m. And we're going to be looking at various plastics and different associated recycling processes and many ways that you can increase your own recyclability of your items that you're recycling and ways that we can reduce plastic recycling overall. Our third and final webinar is called Plastic Waters. It is on August 26th at 12 p.m. and it's looking at the impacts of plastics when they're in the water and in the open environment and their impacts on ecosystem health, aquatic life, and then their impacts on human health as well. If you have signed up for only one webinar and you want to watch all the webinars and you haven't signed up for them, please go to our website and sign up. And if you have friends and family that are interested, it'd be great to have them come join as well. So just a little bit of a look at what we're going to look at today. I'm going to show you, first of all, a little bit about microplastics, specifically microfibers, an introduction to the textile industry. We're going to look at fibers, which you can sort of think of as like the raw material to fabrics. So we have natural fibers, synthetic fibers, and man-made cellulosic fibers. Specifically, we're going to be looking at cotton and polyester. And then we're going to look at universal fiber to fabric production processes. So we're going to look at associated chemicals and water pollution there. We're going to look a little bit about fast fashion, and then we're going to go into the Divert and Capture project, which is Georgian Bay's project to combat microfiber pollution. And then we're going to look at what you can do as a consumer to reduce your own impacts. So here's just a little bit of microplastic background for perspective. Plastic doesn't degrade in the environment. It's not biodegradable. It's only degrading into smaller and smaller pieces. And these pieces accumulate in animals, in the environment, and in people. So we have macroplastics, which are big pieces of plastic. And then we also have microplastics, which are anything smaller than 5 millimeters. We can see there are fragments, which are small pieces that have broken off from a larger piece of macroplastic. We have polystyrene foam, which is already small and breaks off from food containers and styrofoam. Nurdles, which are plastic pellets used in manufacturing. And then we have microfibers, which is the most common type of microplastic. So let's look at where those are coming from. So plastic microfibers are tiny strands less than 5 millimeters in size that get released from your synthetic clothes in the laundry. So the Great Lakes have equal to or higher average concentrations of microplastic than ocean gyres. So microplastics have been found in Great Lakes fish. They've even been found in Great Lakes beer. So these fish and these animals, they don't know that they're consuming all of this plastic. And we as people, we don't know that we're consuming plastic either. On average per week, as a person, you're consuming 5 grams of plastic, which is the equivalent size of a credit card. And this number is much higher if you're drinking from plastic water bottles. So let's look a little bit about the textile industry. It's the second most polluting industry globally, second only to the oil industry. All the processes pollute all aspects of the environment. So they pollute the water, they pollute the air, and they pollute the soil. And they have huge ecosystem impacts. Globally, the textile industry is worth over $1.3 trillion US. So this is a massive industry, and it's more than just clothing. It's also bedding, it's upholstery, it's your carpets, it's your shoes. So it's everywhere. Canada's consumption of textiles by clothing volume is about 2% of the world's total, and Canadian mills supply less than 50% of this. So a lot of our textiles are imported. Canada actually accepts 9 times more per capita from developing countries than the US of textiles. 80 million new garments are produced globally each year, and this is double the amount compared to in the year 2000. So not only are we producing more clothing and textiles, but we're buying more of them more often, and we're using them for less amounts of time. This overconsumption of material goods and the rise of fast fashion has changed the way that we view and buy clothing. On average, Canadians are throwing away 81 pounds of textiles a year, which is the equivalent weight of 4 tires. So we can look a little bit more into depth of fibers. So fibers are the raw materials to fabrics. They can be divided into 2 main categories. There's natural fibers and there's man-made fibers, and they further divide into different fibers, and then there are different associated sources. Today, we're going to be focusing on cotton, polyester, and rayon. And I just wanted to use these pictures to demonstrate that close up, they have different textures, and that means that they're going to have different properties and different capabilities as a fabric. So global fiber production in 2019 was 11 million metric tons, which was a record high. This industry is continuing to grow, and it will have significant and increasing impacts in the environment if we aren't considering sustainability. So looking at this chart, you can see the orange, which is taking up a huge, huge chunk, is all synthetic fibers. So basically plastic. Polyester alone is taking up more than 50% of the market share. When you look at green on the other side, it is the second largest, and those are plant-based fibers. You can see that cotton is the most used plant-based fiber. The third largest group, and that sort of gray-brown color, is man-made cellulosic fibers, and it's still not big in comparison to cotton and polyester even. And then the final category up at the very top is blue, and that's animal-derived fibers, and they're barely taking up any space in the market share. If we want to break it down more and look in depth, we can see polyester obviously taking up the most amount, and only 14 of this polyester used is recycled polyester. And most of this recycled polyester is coming from plastic water bottles. When we look over at cotton, which is the second most used fiber, we can see that 25% of cotton is preferred cotton. And so preferred cotton just means that it's been sustainably grown and collected, and it's gone through various certifications through things such as Fair Trade, Better Cotton Initiative, and Cleaner Cotton, just so that it's certified as a preferred cotton. So let's look at natural fibers. Natural fibers are natural materials derived from plants, animals, and minerals. If sustainable production and collection material techniques are used, they do have less of an impact on the environment than other fibers. Their physical structure naturally provides insulation, active humidity regulation, and noise cancellation. Fibers derived from plants cause a lot less wear in processing machinery, and they don't have the same associated health effects as synthetic fibers. On the surface, natural fibers can appear as the best and most sustainable option, and they are in fact biodegradable until they're treated with various chemicals in their production process. These chemicals could be like flame retardants or dyes, and the chemicals slow down the progression of natural fibers breaking down in the environment, and it leaves them in the environment polluting for extended periods of time. And when you think about additional pollutants such as fertilizers and insecticides used in the production of these, it creates a variety of harmful ecosystem health effects. So let's look at cotton. Cotton is the most used natural fiber. It has been used for fabric production for more than 3,000 years, and it's the most widely grown non-food crop. And depending on the production and manufacturing processes used, it can be extremely harmful to the environment. So 16% of global insecticide and 7% of herbicide use is on cotton. Out of the 15 most commonly used pesticides, 7 are listed as possible, probable, likely, or known carcinogens by the US Protection Agency. In India, 50% of all of their insecticide use is on cotton production. India is the leader of cotton production, with 61 million tons being produced per year. Cotton, when it's grown, is primarily done in monocultures, which means that all the plants in the field are all the same and there's no rotation of different plants. And this degrades ecosystems and it depletes the available nutrients in the soil. This is leading to soil degradation and it makes growing harder. So this means that farmers are going to have to be using more water and they're going to have to be using more fertilizers and more pesticides and more insecticides in those areas. Cotton is also one of the top 3 genetically modified crops in the world. And in some countries, patent laws require farmers to buy new genetically modified seeds every year. Seed patent laws exist in many countries and they exist in many agricultural sectors globally. They can create conflict and put a lot of economic stress on farmers. Most cotton is grown in semi-arid and water-scarce areas. 73% of growing cotton requires irrigation. So this means that surface and groundwater is being diverted for the irrigation of cotton. I want to bring your attention to the picture on the bottom of the screen there, and you can see the difference in the landscape in those crop circles where irrigation is happening, and it's so green, and the rest of the landscape is not that color, and so we're putting stress on the lands diverting this water for this irrigation of cotton. Producing 1 kilogram of cotton uses about 20,000 liters of water, and more than 24 billion kilograms of cotton are being produced each year. That quick sum is equal to over 480 trillion liters of water per year. It takes 2,650 liters of water just to produce 1 cotton t-shirt. That's about 27 bathtubs for just 1 t-shirt. So this water needs to be managed sufficiently, or it's going to pose major risks to the environment. So here's the Aral Sea, which was formerly the 4th largest lake in the world. It used to be 170,000 square kilometers. For comparison, Georgian Bay is only 15,000 square kilometers. It was located in Asia between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and it's currently only 10% of its original size. It's known as one of the greatest environmental disasters of all time, and it occurred due to diverting water for agriculture, primarily the growth of cotton, and it started in the 50s and had a very rapid cascade of impacts on the environment. So due to the properties of water in an area, especially water's specific heat capacity, it has the ability to mediate temperature of the surrounding area. This is why places like Vancouver and even Toronto have milder winters than more continental cities such as Ottawa. So with the reduction of water in the surrounding area got hotter and it increased evaporation, which created a positive feedback loop. This evaporation also caused salt and runoff and fertilizer concentrations to increase, resulting in this lake being categorized as a public health hazard. Today, in 2021, the Aral Sea looks very similar to how it did in 2014, and there's little hope for rejuvenation. Finally, a little bit on the bright side, there is organic cotton, which is a sustainable method of growing cotton, which uses no synthetic chemicals. It has a lower water consumption. It has a lower water contamination. It has lower energy demand, lower CO2 emissions, lower soil erosion. It also increases organic matter in the soil and increases biodiversity. And it decreases the amount of human and wildlife health effects from growing cotton. However, most cotton grown is not organic. It's important you can look at the labels on your clothing when you're buying to see if the cotton, if the natural fibers that you're buying have been collected and produced sustainably. And I'll pass it on to Carrie from here.
Okay, thank you, Bronwyn. We're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk more about man-made materials, starting with synthetic fibers. So synthetic fibers are created through chemical processes. They are made from various chemicals and inorganic materials, primarily from petroleum and coal-based polymers, which essentially means that they are plastic. Many synthetic fibers are imitations of their natural counterparts, but with a couple added benefits, such as flexibility, stiffness, and durability. Synthetic fibers are easy to mass produce and are cheaper than most completely natural fabrics, making synthetics more desirable for manufacturers and to be sold for clothing and other textile products. Fibers from synthetic textiles are called microfibers, and they account for 35% of microplastic pollution. They find their way into the environment through improper textile disposal, fabrics exposed to the environment, and even laundering your clothes. These microfibers can accumulate in our waterways, and they're almost impossible to remove once they've infiltrated the system. Focus really needs to be placed on stopping this pollution at the source throughout production, usage, and disposal. Polyester is a synthetic polymer, which is a class of synthetic fibers made from plastic and is composed of a straight chain of the same functional group, which makes it very durable. So if you imagine Legos of the same shape and size stacked into a really big tower, that's essentially what we're making. Polyester is made from the liquid precursor of all plastics called polymelt and is converted directly into textile fibers without pelletizing first, making it more efficient and environmentally friendly. So typically a plastic product is first received by manufacturers in the plastic pellets that they then melt and mold into the final product. So here they essentially skip that step and go directly into the creation of fibers. It was first produced in 1941 and can now be found polluting every part of the world, including Arctic ice caps. The bottom right picture on this slide is of the Marianas Trench, where even there microfibers were found. In fact, 73% of microfiber pollution is polyester, meaning that about 25% of all microplastic pollution is in the form of polyester. With each kilogram of mechanically recycled polyester, there is a 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to virgin polyester. Mechanical recycled polyester is from plastic water bottles, makes up the vast majority of recycled polyester. However, only about 14% of the world's polyester production comes from these recycled inputs. As previously mentioned, 25% of microplastic pollution is polyester, which is an alarming number. However, that is not the only alarming fact about polyester pollution. Polyester production relies heavily on the petrochemical industry for its raw materials, with 70 million barrels of oil used annually to create polyester, which is the equivalent of 11 square kilometers of barrels. This releases 14.2 kilograms of carbon dioxide per 1 kilogram of polyester produced. And polyester isn't naturally biodegradable and can take up to 200 years to break down into particles that are no longer visible to the human eye. In terms of water usage, a hypothetical comparison shows that the water used in polyester production is less than 0.1% of that required in cotton growing, though it is much more highly polluting. The main use of water in polyester production is in the production of the plastic resin itself and for the cooling of the fiber production. This cooling for the fiber production is largely unused and returned to the system, therefore not really included in the usage count. Man-made cellulosic fibers were actually invented before polyester, but their recent investment was done as a way to ease the pollution of synthetic textile fibers. So cellulose fibers are made with repeating glucose molecules found in essentially any plant matter. They are attached to one another, creating a straight chain of polymers, similarly to the polymer chain that we discussed before. Now, you may be thinking that because these are made from plants, they are completely natural. And the real answer to that is not always. There are two types of cellulose fibers. There are natural fibers, which are only processed as much as needed to clean them for use. And then there's manufactured fibers, which are processed into a pulp first and then extruded similarly to the synthetic fibers. Then, depending on the type of fibers mix, as well as the chemicals used in the manufacturing process, the fiber can take on many different physical properties. These days, the textile industry uses regenerated cellulose. They're manufactured through the conversion of natural cellulose to a soluble cellulosic derivative and subsequent regeneration, which basically means it's reduced into its core components, which is the cellulose, before mixing it with certain chemicals, causing those cellulose molecules to react and then forming a chain resulting in the specific fiber. The visual on the right here is the final steps of regeneration. For example, a common textile called rayon is produced when a solution of cellulose encounters sulfuric acid, which is also seen in this video. So there are many different types of man-made cellulosic fibers. They are all produced in slightly different ways, allowing for each fiber to take on a different physical property, as we just mentioned. Rayon, the most popular, is a fabric made from purified cellulose fibers from wood pulp specifically. It's breathable, it's moisture absorbent, making it really popular in athletic wear. It's often blended with other fabrics like polyester or cotton. There's modal, which is a slightly more durable form of rayon. Lyocell is also a form of rayon and is used for a variety of different textiles and bedroom items, such as mattresses. And then finally, acetate is used in soft and silky fabrics, and it comes from bamboo viscose or synthetic bamboo. So even with all of the benefits of natural fibers, there are some drawbacks. The overconsumption and overproduction of man-made cellulose fibers, fiber clothing, has many environmental impacts, one of which being deforestation of ancient and endangered forests. 70 million trees are cut down annually to make clothing, in addition to the 30% of all man-made cellulosic fibers coming from these vital landmarks. In addition, many chemicals are used in the fabric production process, including sodium hydroxide, carbon disulfide, and sulfuric acid. These chemicals are used in excess, causing chemical waste that spills into the environment. Then there's also chemicals that remain in the fabric themselves and are shed along with the microfibers that come off of our clothing, infesting our waters.
Thanks, Carrie. My name's Sophie, and I'm just going to switch gears into the fabric production of clothing and its environmental effects. As Bronwyn and Carrie have discussed, the fiber production of clothing differs depending on the raw materials and the type of fiber being produced. The fiber to fabric production, however, is very similar regardless of the type of clothing being produced. All processes follow similar steps, such as spinning, which is the process of drawing out these fibers from a mass and twisting them together to form a continuous thread or yarn. Weaving, which is interlocking the thread or yarn to create the fabric, and dyeing, which is the final process to make the fabric to the desired color. As a result, these fabric processes have similar impacts on the environment, being the chemical usage, chemical waste, and water usage. A huge problem with the fabric production of clothing is its chemical contamination. 25% of global chemical output originates from the textile industry, and around 8,000 synthetic chemicals are used to turn raw materials into textiles. The main chemicals used in this process are azo dyes. They are the largest group of synthetic dyes and are toxic, containing carcinogenic amines, which means they've been proven to increase the risk of cancer in humans. In addition, 200,000 tons of dyes are lost to effluents every year during the process of dyeing due to inefficiency. Dyes and pigments are also designed to resist biodegradation, meaning that they will not break down and in turn pollute water. PFCs are another chemical used and help to make stain-resistant and waterproof clothing. They can pose health risks to humans if they accumulate in drinking water, even at low levels such as 1 part per trillion, which for reference is less than 1 teaspoon in 1,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Another chemical used is formaldehyde, which is commonly known to preserve organic materials. It's used in fabric production to minimize the presence of wrinkles, but has been found to also be toxic to humans. Other chemicals used in this process are PVC, lead, PET, and more, which all have harmful effects on humans and the environment. Once these harmful chemicals are released, it is extremely difficult to clean up and remove from the surroundings, creating a ton of pollution, including water pollution. As we have touched on in previous slides, water usage and pollution is a huge problem in the production of clothing. 20% of industrial water pollution in the world comes from the treatment and dyeing of textiles. The fashion industry uses 79 billion cubic meters of water annually, accounting for 2% of all freshwater extraction globally, which is expected to double by 2030. Processing just 1 kilogram of any fiber produces between 100 to 150 liters of water. Countries that produce the most clothing bear the environmental strain. For example, 70% of China's rivers and lakes are contaminated by over 2.5 billion gallons of wastewater from the textile and dye industry, making the water undrinkable and harming marine wildlife. Most clothing that we wear is made of a mix of different clothing materials. For example, a standard pair of sweatpants are made from 78% cotton and 22% polyester. Mixing different materials changes the properties such as the look, stretch, and texture of the clothing to make many different types of clothing and styles. While the versatility of mixing materials is amazing, it makes fabrics very hard to recycle at the end of their lifespan. It is very labor intensive to recycle mixed materials, as there are so many different material combinations, making it impossible to sort them all out. This is one of the main reasons why only 1% of mixed clothing materials are recycled. A perfect example of mixed materials in clothing is denim jeans. Denim jeans are one of the most popular articles of clothing for Canadians to wear, and they have a huge range in the percentage of cotton and synthetic fibers to create a certain amount of stiffness or stretch in the jeans. Denim jeans have detrimental effects on our water as they release microfibers when they are washed. Just one pair of blue jeans can shed up to 56,000 microfibers in just one wash. A study in 2016 found that half the people living in Canada wear jeans almost every day, and the average Canadian washes their jeans just after 2 wears, which adds up to be a lot of microfiber pollution. While cotton jeans may be made from some natural fibers, they can still be very harmful to the environment due to the chemical processes in their production. These chemicals slow down the process of natural fibers breaking down in our water, leading them to pollute our waters for years. One of Georgian Bay Forever's partners, Sam Athey, worked with a team from the University of Toronto on a study to investigate the Canadian Arctic and Great Lakes to test for microfibers. They tested water samples from numerous locations in northern Canada and the Great Lakes. This is shown on the black spots on the diagram to the right. Shockingly, all samples that were tested contained microfibers from blue jeans. These denim fibers were discovered at depths greater than 1,500 meters, meaning that the fibers can travel long distances and accumulate in remote regions. Microfiber concentrations in the Great Lakes, the Canadian Arctic, and shallow suburban lakes in southern Ontario range from 0.4 to 3.2 microfibers per gram. Denim microfibers specifically made up 90% of all microplastic pollution found. Microfibers were also found in rainbow smelt, which is a common predator eating smaller fish in the Great Lakes. This means that microfibers are making their way up the food chain, eventually being consumed by humans as well. And as Bronwyn mentioned earlier, humans consume about a credit card-sized amount of plastic every week. Next, we're going to dive into the overconsumption of clothing, specifically the fast fashion industry. So what is fast fashion? Fast fashion refers to the fast consumption of clothing. It thrives on trend turnover in order for clothing companies to release new collections and for people to always feel the need to buy more clothing. Slow fashion, on the other hand, takes into account the quality and lifetime of the article of clothing. Slow fashion clothing items are made to last, focusing on the environmental impact of the production of the clothing garment, as well as the longevity of the item so that there's less clothing consumption. As a result, slow fashion items tend to be more basic, giving them a timeless look that will last through different fashion trends. Fast fashion has become much more popular over the last couple decades as a result of mass production of synthetic fabrics at low costs. The turnover into fast fashion has resulted in loss of quality of garments as well, causing overconsumption of clothing because in order to make clothing as cheap as possible for consumers and businesses, the materials used to make this clothing are made of different cheap synthetic blends. Lower quality garments are not able to last very long, and in addition, they are rarely able to be recycled at the end of their lifetime, as the mixture of materials is not cost-effective to even try to recycle them. This has resulted in the fast fashion industry to create about 80 billion garments a year, and on average, each garment only being worn 10 times before it is thrown away. The average consumer buys 60% more clothing than they did 15 years ago, and as Bronwyn mentioned, in Canada alone, the average person throws away 81 pounds of textiles annually. While fast fashion seems to have a very low cost for the business and consumer, there are many costs in the future which are completely forgotten about. For example, the environmental cost of producing clothing, which is huge, as the United Nations reported in 2018 that fast fashion accounts for approximately 10% of global greenhouse emissions annually and 20% of wastewater globally. The environmental impacts of fast fashion are causing huge problems for the future, and the cost of mitigating the environmental effects will be devastating. In addition, there is a cost paid by fast fashion factory workers, as many work very long hours in unsafe conditions and are paid under the poverty line. The health of consumers is also put on the line with fast fashion, as our skin is the largest organ in our body and can absorb what we put on it, even chemicals in clothing. A Greenpeace study found hazardous chemicals in 63% of clothing tested, and since we are constantly wearing clothes, these chemicals can greatly affect our health through our skin. The quote at the bottom of the slide by Lucy Siegel is, "Fast fashion isn't free. Someone somewhere is paying," which is true, as the initial cost of fast fashion is low. We will be paying for the environmental, social, and health effects for generations to come.
Great, thank you, Sophie. And now that we have an understanding of how our clothes can directly impact the environment and waterways, we can discuss what we, Georgian Bay Forever, and our many volunteers are doing to capture the microfibers that enter our waterways through our washing machines. The three goals of our Divert and Capture project are to physically divert microplastics from entering our waterways at the source, which we are doing through our microfiber studies in Parry Sound and now in Collingwood, engage the community with hands-on shoreline cleanups, and provide the public with information on microplastics and practical tips to reduce plastic use, which we are doing through webinars like this one. So, partnered with the Rockman Lab from the University of Toronto, the pilot project for Divert and Capture began in August 2019 in Parry Sound, which is a town located on the east shoreline of Georgian Bay and home to just over 6,000 year-round residents. There, we asked 100 volunteer households connected to town water to install a filter to their washing machine. They were to use the filter for 2 years during the duration of the study and keep the fibers caught in the filter to then be collected and weighed by Georgian Bay Forever to track the amount of fibers we were able to divert.
We have just completed the final round of collection for fibres in Parry Sound, and we have now begun another project in Collingwood on a bit of a larger scale. For our Collingwood study, we are aiming for 300 households to get a filter. 200 will be installed this summer and 100 next summer. The Filtrol 160 is the filter that we use in our study and can capture up to 89% of microfibers. Volunteers with filters are expected to empty their filters 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how often they do their laundry and how many people live in the house. Our preliminary results after the first round of collection in Parry Sound found that the filter captured 162 to 371 particles per 5 milligrams of lint. Municipal wastewater treatment plants can capture up to 98% of microfibers and plastics, but in a single wastewater treatment plant can still release millions of microfibers a day. For a little perspective, the Parry Sound wastewater treatment plant processes 3 million liters of water per day, which means reducing fibers by just 1 fiber per liter would stop 3 million fibers per day from entering Georgian Bay. On the right side of the graph, it shows before the filters were installed in March and July of 2019, and on the left shows August 2019 after they were installed. And as you can see, there is a decrease of microfibers in the samples, which is exactly what we were hoping to see. The picture on the bottom right of the 3 jars is 70 kilograms of microfibers that we collected in Parry Sound over 3 months. So it's working. The full paper for the Parry Sound study will be released later this summer, so look out for that for more results. And now that our study in Collingwood is ramping up, we've begun installing filters, and we hope these results carry over from Parry Sound. And Georgian Bay needs you. We are still looking for about 150 volunteers for our Collingwood study, and we would love for you to be a part of this journey with us. There are 3 simple criteria that must be met, which is volunteers must use their washing machines year-round and be connected to town water. There must be space for the filter, which is about the same size as a vertical paper towel roll. And finally, volunteers must participate over the course of 2 years, which will include a short survey about laundry habits and emptying the filter every 2 to 3 weeks into a provided bag that will be picked up for measurement. If you would like to join us or have any further questions, you can ask them in the question portion of today's webinar or email the project coordinator, Brooke Harrison, and her email is there on the slide. The ultimate goal of this study is to create legislation so that all laundry machines manufactured and sold in Canada must have a microfiber filter built in, which leads me to Bill 279. Bill 279 is a bill that amends the Environmental Protection Act to prohibit the sale or offering for sale of washing machines that are not equipped with a specified microplastics filter. The current status is that it has been carried through the first meeting and will continue on. This is a great step in the right direction for Canada, and hopefully other countries will do the same. To support the bill, you can write or email your local Ontario member of provincial parliament, wherever you live in Ontario. There are more ideas about what you can put in your letter or email on our website. So if you would like to learn more about the bill and how you can support it, you can head to the link on our slide. So how can you make a difference? We have 10 things that you can do to make a difference in the amount of fibers that you are releasing from your laundry machine. The first and most important tip we can give you is to buy less. Buying less is the simplest, best thing you can do. These days, people buy clothes just to buy clothes and end up with tons of clothes in their closet that they don't even wear. And then they say, I have nothing to wear, and then they go out and buy more clothes, when in reality, our closets are full of usable clothing. And something we like to say is to be a conscious consumer. So always be aware of what you are buying, whether it's clothing or other things like food and plastic. Check to see if you really need to buy it. And also, shopping for used clothing is a great way to minimize our impact on the environment. Used clothes shed less fibers than new clothes. And another great thing you can organize is a clothing swap with friends, and it's great to get the clothes you've always wanted from your friend's closet. So taking care of your clothes is another simple task to ensure your clothes last longer. So check the tags on your clothing to ensure you're taking care of them as well as you can. Washing clothes in cold water also reduces the amount of fibers released from your clothes. So unless there are specific washing instructions, try cold water. And of course, wash your clothes less. Most garments do not need to be washed after just wearing them once. So try and hold off on washing your clothes as much as possible. And so try and avoid ripped jeans or any other frayed garments because the fibers are loose, they release much easier in the wash and as you're out and about wearing them. Also do some research into where you buy your clothes. Do the brands pledge sustainability? Are they organic? Try and find stores that sell organic clothing or pledge sustainability to ensure you are buying the most sustainable option. Also, make sure to look out for greenwashing. Greenwashing is a marketing scheme for organizations to appear more environmentally friendly or green to the public. It is becoming more common with increasingly consumer demand for sustainability commitments, and it never hurts to do a little research about the brands you're supporting. Laundry detergent strips are a great way to reduce waste as they eliminate the need for a plastic container, and depending on the brand and ingredients, they can be better for your clothes and skin. And finally, you can get a filter for your washing machine or look for a washing machine with a filter in it. There are companies that have filters built in, and hopefully that will become the new standard. And last tip is to get a front-loading washing machine rather than a top-loading washing machine, as top-loading washing machines release 7 times more microfibers than front-loading ones, and front loaders also use less water. These may all seem like such small things to change, and how do those really make a difference, but they do. And the quote at the bottom reads, "Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want." And I think it's really important to think about when we're shopping, do we really want to be giving our money to companies and businesses that continue to pollute our environment? And thank you so much for joining us today. Please know that your support enables our work, and we also would like to acknowledge our funders and for these projects and our partners as well. Thank you again, and if there are any questions, please send them in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everyone for participating and listening. I hope you learned something here today, and I hope you will be able to share that with your friends and your family members and bring that home to your to changes that we're all able to make. There's a lot of doom and gloom, but I hope we ended on a very positive note, and knowing that even these what may seem like small actions, they really do make a huge difference. So thank you very much for that. So I'm just reading some of these questions and comments. I do have a few questions here. Kevin, thank you for, he says, great wrap up. I was worried I'd have to go naked. None of us want that. So there is alternatives. So thank you very much for that. So I do have a few questions for our panelists here. So the first one here, how does our clothing get recycled? So is there anything in Ontario, or what can we do with garments that simply can't be donated?
So it is important, if you do have clothing that is still good and still wearable, to donate. There are people that need those clothing, and it's great to use thrift stores and support a circular economy. When clothing can't get recycled and it's not donated, it's most likely going to be downcycled into something like industrial rags. If you're more interested in the recycling of clothing and recycling in general, our next webinar is on recycling. So it'd be great if you want to sign up, if you're interested in that. We do go into a little bit more detail there.
Great. So there's a comment here. At our summer cottage, we hand wash all our clothing. Does this keep microfibers out of the lake, or are fewer microfibers released? So I can take a stab at that one. Yes, that is great. So another kind of tip is to do, if you're using a laundry machine, to do fuller loads of laundry, because that kind of isn't as much turbulence on the clothes, which then creates more microfibers released. So hand washing it is great for many reasons. It uses much less water, but when you're hand washing, it's much more gentle on your clothing. So that does absolutely, it doesn't release as many microfibers at all. So there's a question, where can we buy the laundry strips and what are they made of? I don't know if someone wants to answer that one. I personally find that a lot of these different eco stores or kind of refillery stores that are kind of environmental stores, any of those kind of stores, that's personally where I have bought my laundry strips. There's a few different companies that are producing these strips. And so they're all kind of made of different materials, but typically these strips use a lot less chemicals, if any chemicals almost. So they don't use the jug of plastic for your laundry detergent, but it's also much less chemicals for you. So yeah, I would recommend any of those eco stores, refillery stores is where a good place to start looking for those strips. Could you post a copy of the laundry frequency guide? I would like to wash only as often as I need to. Yeah, so that is a great one. We will be posting this webinar after, but we will make sure to post the laundry frequency guide. And really it's what I go off of, which maybe isn't the cleanest, but if it's not dirty and doesn't smell, don't clean it. Like there's, I think jeans, they recommend every 6 weeks to wash. So it really, it does not need to be as often as some of these say, of course, unless it is noticeably dirty or smelly. Where to buy a laundry filter? Where can I buy a filter? So that's a great question. So the filter that we use is called the Filtrol 160. However, in the lab, so that the Filtrol 160 is captures up to 89% of microfibers in a lab setting. We did the lint lover as well, and it was almost just as effective. It was 87%. There's a few different filters on the market that you can buy. The lint lover is a Canadian company and you can buy that online. The Filtrol 160 you can buy online or on Amazon. However, I will just note that it is they can be almost $200, and you have to consider that the lint or the Filtrol is American price, so you might have to pay for customs and duties as well. But there's a few different ones, or there's the Coraball that was 26% effective in the lab, so not as effective. The Coraball is an internal one, so you put inside of your laundry machine. So 26% still captures some, which is great. So there's a few different options there. Has there been any research on the effects of plastics on septic systems? So I will say that yes, there has. On our website, there's a really great article, and in one of our newsletters, maybe two or a few newsletters ago, but there is an article on our newsletter about the effects of plastics on septic systems. The Filtrol 160 was actually originally is built for septic systems. So it was actually, that was the first intent of it, to stop microfibers from entering the septic systems and clogging septic systems. So that was why the Filtrol 160 was actually originally designed and built. So they are in the septic system, often depending on where you live and where you are located. Often septic systems are pumped and then brought to a wastewater treatment plant. So it is treated at the wastewater treatment plant. But that isn't the case for every municipality. So it does kind of depend on where you are located. Let's see. There's lots of really great ones. How can I sign up for a filter? You can sign up for a filter by emailing myself. It's brooke.harrison@gbf.org. If you are in Collingwood and on town water, and there is a few questions, unfortunately, it needs to be on town water as well as town wastewater as well. So both municipal waters. What about fabric softeners? I rarely use this, but sometimes for towels. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that. Fabric softeners unfortunately do increase your release of microfibers. So we recommend to not avoid using fabric softeners because it increases your microfiber pollution.
The other thing with fabric softeners is that the thing that like allows them to work are chemicals, and so it might not affect you aggressively, but there are some people that are allergic to the chemicals that are used in certain fabric softeners, so it might increase the amount of chemicals that are, you know, found on your towels and things like that. So in the next wash, it could potentially release more chemicals into your wastewater.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's a comment here that you can buy the laundry strips at the Superstore in Midland. Another one, True Earth laundry strips. Concerning about the laundry detergent, what about good old laundry powder? Does anyone have any comments on that one? I think the biggest thing with the laundry detergent, whether it's strips, powder, liquid, it's reading what those are. Even I know for laundry, like a bottle of liquid laundry detergent, if you look at the chemicals on it, the biggest thing you're paying for is the plastic jug and the water in the liquid detergent. So in that sense, I think powder is maybe better for your money, but however, the chemical side of it, not specifically aware of it, but you'd have to look at what the chemicals are inside of it. Vinegar is a great fabric softener. Agreed. That is, vinegar I feel like is a great replacement for a lot of different chemical cleaning products as well. In the chat box here, if anyone is interested in reading the article about microfibers and septics, it was just posted in the chat, so you can click on that link. Will you be releasing a full reference list for all citations mentioned in the slides? If you want to email us, we definitely can send you any articles if there's a specific one you're interested in. We'll be releasing the slides with the video of this presentation. But yeah, if you want to email us, we can definitely get you the citations for the different slides. Let's see, very concerned about bottled water issue. I still see people buying plastic water bottles. Can these bottles be more green? I share that concern with you as well. It is, I think one thing to acknowledge is that many people unfortunately have to still rely on plastic water bottles because they may not have access to clean drinking water. However, that is not the case for also a lot of people who do rely on plastic water bottles. I think something that will be brought up in the next webinar, and you guys can discuss now if you want, is well, I'll just let you guys speak to that if you want.
Yeah, so there are quite a few different like new technologies being invented. Basically, there's different like biodegradable things, or just like stuff that is made with greener products, and a lot of it's being tested out in labs in like Germany and in France, and they are finding like they've already made plastic utensils that are biodegradable, or there's different types of biodegradable things, but can be broken down into the environment or by the environment. That's basically what we're talking about here. So there's utensils and plates and things like that. They've also found certain types of fungi that are able to break down specific chemical, specific things that are made of like certain chemicals, so they can break those down under certain conditions. So there are definitely new technologies that are being made to make that a greener thing, because I don't think it's likely for us to completely get rid of water bottles. but hopefully we can start to do that soon.
Awesome. So here's a comment. So fast fashion is often supported due to its trendiness and affordability. Unfortunately, slow fashion is often a little outdated in its styles and is quite expensive. How do you recommend achieving a balance in buying and finding clothing that is trendy, affordable, and environmentally friendly? Are there any specific companies you could recommend?
So a great way to reduce the impact of buying new clothes can be just new to you. Thrifting is a great way to get new clothes. New clothes actually, when you're washing them, are going to shed more microfibers than clothes that are used and have already shed off sort of that new stuff that just needs to be let go. As for looking for eco-friendly brands and companies, it's actually illegal in Canada for companies not to recognize, have a tag on the clothing of what has been put into the material. So you can look to see, and most companies, if they are being sustainable and if they do use say organic cotton, they're going to put that out there on the label to say that we are a green company, we are using organic cotton. I don't know of any very specific brands, but thrifting and just looking for those tags and those sustainability promises, and obviously being aware of companies lying and greenwashing is just something that you could do as a consumer.
There is also a website that I'm about to link in the chat that has links to a couple different brands like Patagonia and H&M that provide their own clothing swaps. So a lot of people will send their clothes out back to the company, and then from there they're gonna either resell it or do something else that so it's essentially used clothing that people don't want anymore. But I'm gonna link that right now.
And with fast fashion, it's okay to buy new clothes and keep up with trends. It's just making sure that when you buy clothes that you really like them and it's something that you're going to wear for a long time, and just trying to reduce your own consumption of clothing as much as possible.
Absolutely. So there's a really great comment here. Does the plastic we consume make its way back into our environment, or does some of it stay in our bodies for extended amounts of time? So I think this is a comment that I think this presentation raised, it's scary, it's concerning, it's disturbing that we consume a credit card size of plastic every single week, and that is unavoidable, and it is just going to increase as our plastic demands increase. So it is really scary, it is concerning. There is a lot of current research happening on what that means for the human body. There's been a lot of kind of recent studies, and I think essentially we know this is a fact right now. We know it's in our fish, we know it's in our beer, we know it's in our water, our salt, we know we're consuming it, but we don't know what that means yet. So there is a lot of research happening currently of what it means for the human body and what those impacts are going to be. So there is some interesting articles, but I think really what we know is that we're consuming our garbage, our trash, because we have mismanaged our waste. And what can we do about that? And I think the biggest thing is the overconsumption. We just consume, we use so much plastic, we rely on so much plastic. And I guess the answer is hopefully some of this research comes out, but I think we all need to do a part into really reducing our single-use plastic in our everyday lives. So that wasn't a straight answer for you, because I think simply we don't know what that means and what the impacts of these consumption of plastic means on our bodies quite yet. But there is a lot of research currently underway for that. All right, so it's 1 o'clock. So we have one last question that I'm just going to read out here. Could government regulation reduce pollution by the fabric industry? I don't know if anyone wants to take.
I can take a little stab. Yeah. So in Canada, we have quite a few. I mentioned in the earlier slides, Canadian mills are supplying only 50% of Canada's textile industry. So we have about 1,000 manufacturers in Ontario and Quebec. I think overall, if we're trying to reduce the impacts due to the textile industry, it's going to have to be a global effort. And that's going to start with individuals and making a difference on an individual level and telling your friends to buy used and about synthetic clothing and just raising awareness so that the demands change and therefore manufacturing is going to have to change with it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right, well, we will end on that note. We really hope you can join us for our next 2 webinars. The next one will be on recycling, and the one at the end of August is plastic in our water. So a lot of more great information for you to come, and again, a lot of really great tips on what we can all do in our everyday lives to be more sustainable and more conscious of how we are consuming and what we are wearing in our everyday lives. So thank you again so much for joining us, and we will see you on July 26th. Yes, we will see you on July 26th. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.